Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of April 29th, 2019. On today's show, I talk about restaurant names and ride sharing and gondolas. And Jim presents the next to last show in our Chronological Disneyland series. But first, let's bring in the man who wants on-ride photos for the emotional roller coaster of life, one Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
Len, quick question. If you're on an emotional roller coaster, do you still have to keep your hands and arms inside the vehicle? Because isn't that kind of like a cavity search? So,
Still, I think, Jim, valuable advice.
okay. Since we're talking about emotional roller coasters, did you see there's some imagery out there? They're moving at pace with the Inside Out emotional whirlwind that's being built at Pixar Place.
No, I didn't know this, but it's kind of funny because I came up with that. We came up with that saying before I knew about this. So, what is the? Isn't it the retheming of a ride at Paradise Pier?
Yeah, it used to be Flick's Flyers at A Bug's Land, got sent back to Italy, I want to say, and they've retooled it, and it's now being dropped on the pad that where you used to find the Maliboomer in the Paradise Pier section of California Adventure, now Pixar Pier. This is going to be renamed Inside Out's Emotional Whirlwind, which, for me, I wish they stuck with the original name, which was Mood Swings.
I always thought Mood Swings would be a great name for either a golf or a softball team.
There we go.
All right, Jim, every show should begin with a round of self-congratulations. We said a couple of weeks ago that from what we were hearing, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway was unlikely to open before Galaxy's Edge in Walt Disney World this summer. The Friday after that show came out at 5 p.m., buried at the end of an announcement about Runaway Railway coming to Disneyland, Disney also confirmed that the ride wouldn't open until spring of 2020. So something like a 7-month delay, 6 to 8 months. I hear the delay may be in getting the projection technology working with the ride vehicles, which is something that Disney hasn't done before. They're trying it for the first time. What's going on there, Jim?
As we talked about, there are in fact some tech issues because, again, this is brand new stuff that Disney's doing. We also mentioned there's a manpower issue because they're throwing every available body at Galaxy's Edge to get it open for the tail end of August.
That's right. If you can swing a hammer and pass a drug test, you're in.
But there's another thing going on here, Len, and it harkens back to Disneyland in January of 1993. They opened Mickey's Toontown then, and then almost 1 year to the day, they then opened the Roger Rabbit cartoon spin ride. The ride was basically done when Mickey's Toontown opened in January of 1993. They kept it in mothballs because it was like, look, we won't have another big attraction in the park opening till March of 1995. That's when the Indiana Jones Adventure is opening. So why don't we just hold this back and then, in January of 94, we can roll out the commercials and so on.
Are you saying, Jim, that Disney purposely doesn't build attractions as fast as they can so they've got something to release every year?
I am shocked.
I'm going to cough right now, Jim. New Fantasyland. Okay, sorry.
Okay, but there's some other secondary issues in regard to Mickey and Minnie.
Okay, that's right, because it's going in Toontown, right? And Disneyland is going in Toontown.
Yeah.
Do they have a space for that kind of ride there?
Actually, if you look at the aerial photography of the park, backing up against Mickey's Toontown is the parade rehearsal space. They also store a lot of the floats and do work inside. I mean, this is just massive building that right now, my understanding is the Gag Factory is going to factor into this, that's either load or unload, but you blow through into this giant space that you can throw the attraction in. But getting back to the Disney Hollywood Studios version, I mean, look, Galaxy's Edge opens tail end of August. Toy Story 4 comes out in June of this year, and by the time we get to fall, it will be the Blu-ray, DVD, digital download be available of that. From conversations I've had with friends at Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment, they anticipate that's going to be one of the big sellers for this holiday season. So demand's going to stay high for Toy Story Land. And then you've got, that whole holiday programming you do for on Sunset Boulevard, coupled with the Jingle Bell, Jingle Bam projection show on the very show building that you were going to have people queuing up to get into for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. And it's like, from what I'm told, yes, if they could, in fact, have this thing open for December of this year. But at the same time, it's like, do we really want to do that? Do we maybe want to push it, into the spring? So that way we've had a couple of months to figure out how we're handling the crowds for Galaxy's Edge, because they've supposedly decided that given that Disneyland has 3 entrances and Walt Disney's World version only has 2, there isn't going to be a lot of overlap between what California learns about how to get people in and out of this and stuff that they can use for Florida. So,
oh, right. It's true. I mean, number one, Walt Disney World only has 2 options, whereas Disneyland has 3. I've heard, by the way, in Disneyland, you'll be able to, they will enter the land in one of 2 ways. I think Critter Country and Big Thunder, and then you can leave either way, right?
Mm-hmm. Well,
or was it enter one and leave anyway?
It turns out there's going to be evidently one way if you're in the first group of the day, that you will have the option of going in through the mid-trail entrance or the entrance at the top of Big Thunder Trail up toward Fantasyland. If you are in group 2, what they're supposedly going to try is that they're
catapults. Catapults, Jim. Catapults.
Well, no, actually.
Meet us on the roof of the Grand Californian.
That's right. Just fling you in. This is something, as I understand it, the folks who handled retail, who, by the way, are not thrilled with the whole 4-hour window thing.
Oh, yeah. Because you spend 2 of those hours in line.
That's it, exactly. It's like, we didn't make all this merch for people to walk by it. They've got to buy it.
With 4 hours, you might be able to do a ride and maybe the lightsaber experience and maybe the droids, but you're definitely, in 4 hours, there's no way you're going to get to see all the restaurants, all the merch, and the one ride. It's just not enough time.
No. But so what they're supposedly talking about doing, and taking advantage of the fact that Rise of the Resistance just will not be operating the first summer, is that Group 2 have to enter through Critter Country, and they'll basically hold them down there, and there will be that Rise of the Resistance gear shop, so people could, in fact, be shopping, buying merch before they're then released.
Okay. So you can. I got it. So you can stage the people there. You can sweep the land of everyone that was already in it, and then bring these people in. Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Oh, okay. All right. That makes more sense.
Cool.
All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to subscribers over at disneydish.bandcamp.com. Thanks to new subscribers Elise C, Amy E, and Mo B, and the longtime subscribers Bill R, Joe M, and BC80. Fun fact, Jim, the idea for Casey's Corner came from an intramural baseball team that these folks played on while attending culinary school.
Not entirely sure that's how it happened, Len, but sure, let's go with it.
Culinary school is the polite way of saying that they've all got knives and like to play with fire, right? Let's go with the Casey's thing.
Okay.
All right, Jim, let's do some quick news. The Disney Dish News is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Disney Dish podcast. For a worry-free travel experience every time, book online at storybookdestinations.com. Jim, Disney's announced travel times between stations for the new gondola Skyliners. It looks like the travel time from Pop Century to Caribbean Beach is around 6 minutes. From Caribbean Beach to the studios is going to be another 6 minutes. If you're headed to the Riviera from Caribbean Beach, it's only 5 minutes, though, because it's right there. And then 9 minutes from Epcot to the Riviera. So if you're doing the math, folks, Pop Century to the studios is 12 minutes. Pop Century to Epcot is 20 minutes. Caribbean Beach to the studios is 6, like we said. And to Epcot is 14. And Riviera to Epcot is 9. And Riviera to the studios is 11. Jim, how does that sound to you? Better than a bus?
Don't get me wrong. I love these numbers, and I love the concept of the view you're going to get from up there. But as we've said from day one, the wild card here is weather. So is the system going to shut down in thunderstorms? Obviously, if there are high winds, it's going to shut down. But what exactly is considered a high wind for the Skyliner? A bus isn't stopped by lightning or a little wind. I'll have to wait for a couple of months of operations and whatever information we gather from that before passing judgment. But I like what I see so far. 20 minutes from Pop to Epcot, though.
And that's going to be a fixed time, too. It's not like you have to worry about when the next gondola is going to come. So I think that if at a 20-minute maximum, that's a really good deal for people at a value resort.
I agree.
All right, Jim, keeping on the transportation theme, I've been working on the 2020 edition of the unofficial guide. And one of the themes that I keep coming back to as I work through the theme park chapters is that ride-sharing programs like Lyft or Uber is going to be really advantageous instead of driving to the parks coming up. And I think we've talked about before here how getting dropped off at the Contemporary is way faster and easier than going through the whole parking thing at the Magic Kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can take more than an hour depending on when you arrive. And you're not going to pay the $25 to park, but that $25 is going to go to ride sharing instead. But the way that I look at it, you're basically buying an hour of time for just a few dollars more. And that's like a good deal, right?
I agree.
The thing that I wanted to talk about here, though, is as I was going through all of the new attractions and development at Epcot and the studios, I realized that they're also going to benefit from ride sharing. Because think about when Remy's Ratatouille Adventure opens in Epcot next spring, the people who come through the International Gateway entrance are going to have like a 10-minute head start on the people who are walking from the main entrance. And that is a huge advantage. That's basically insurmountable. No one's going to beat you with a 10-minute head start. No one's going to beat you to France.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to get to the International Gateway from off-site, if you're driving, is to valet park at one of the Epcot resorts, which is $33 plus gratuity, or get dropped off by an Uber and Lyft. Does that make sense?
Perfectly. If you're going to like Boardwalk, these days you practically have to have an international visa to get past the guard.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to ask you what you're doing there. The easiest thing is to just say, I'm going to valet park and pay the $33 and be done with it.
Yeah.
But if you can do that, right, if you get to Remy first, you can do that and Frozen Ever After without a Fast Pass, in which case you could then Fast Pass Soarin' and Single Rider Test Track, which is a pretty good strategy for seeing all of Epcot's headliners in one day, at least until Guardians of the Galaxy opens. So the other thing, though, is if you think about the studios, right, and I know the studios just went through a huge construction project. They've got a whole new road system going into and out of the parks. They've got a whole new parking lot. But still, man, I worry about traffic going in and out when Galaxy's Edge opens. It seems like getting stuck in gridlock there is a huge risk to take when you want to be at the front of that line to get into the park when it opens. So even there, I still think the best strategy is to get dropped off the boardwalk and walk in. Plus, if you do that, like you said on an earlier show, you can just skyline over to Epcot to see the new evening fireworks without the hassle of moving your car. And I think just for these three parks, ride sharing is the most efficient option.
The wild card again is, when Galaxy's Edge opens and how the crowds go. And just by the fact you've said this, Len, now thousands of people are going to do this.
I know. What's funny, so in the last edition of the unofficial guide, it was the first edition where we put in the tip that said, just take an Uber or a Lyft to get dropped off at a Contemporary. And I'm telling you, Jim, every single letter we received about that particular topic was like, this is genius. You need to win some sort of award for it. Is the Pulitzer Prize out of the question, right? Literally, the people were like, I'm never going to park at the Magic Kingdom again. Every letter we got. In fact, we had one family who did the Magic Kingdom that way the first day and then gave up driving for the rest of the trip. They're like, we're just going to Uber everywhere and be done with
Holy
it.
cow,
Like, okay,
wow.
then, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really good. So Jim, going back to a Galaxy's Edge, though, looks like Disney started sending reservations out for people who are staying in the Disneyland hotels during Galaxy's Edge opening as of May 31st. It looks like everyone's getting that 1 4-hour window inside the Edge. So we talked about this a minute ago, but how exactly is this going to work?
Now, you know how when you go to the Magic Kingdom on a day when Mickey's Not So Scary or Mickey's Very Merry is going to be happening that evening, and you have the person with the sign, to the effect of please come over here, check in so you can get your wristband, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they've got like sandwich boards or vertical signage, right?
Yeah. So as we talked about, when you're sending groups in 4-hour increments in, these cast members will be standing in there throughout the day and scanning your pass, which you'll either have a physical paper copy or it'll be on your phone or your tablet, and they'll then issue you the appropriate color wristband. Now, again, if you're there in the first group of the day, I think there's a component that you can either get it at your resort. There'll be a designated Star Wars Galaxy's Edge desk, and you can go there, and if you're in the first group of the day, and collect it there. Otherwise, they want to be able to do it at the park just in case there are operational issues and they have to adjust. I mean, that's the other thing. It just, at least for California, taking advantage of the 2 entrances off of Big Thunder Trail and the one down at Critter Country. But that's the thing again with Walt Disney World, is that it's only the first group of the day that will be able to basically enter at the top, coming in through Toy Story Land, toward the rest of the day, send them in down off of Grand Avenue. But wasn't there a glitch early on where suddenly the dates were out of sync and people were freaking out, and Disney's call center as a direct result got swamped?
So I through a friend of a friend, heard what was going on there. I won't throw anybody under the bus there, but the reservations that went out ended up being, in many cases, for a day or two before your reservation actually began, which presented practical problems, right? You can't check into the hotel for another couple of days, yet Disney was saying that you needed the reservation to get in. So they eventually corrected all of that. I still don't have my reservations, which is amazing. I don't know what's happening, but hopefully we'll get them in time. So they got that resolved. The park is going to be open, 8 a.m. to midnight at least.
Yep.
So 16 or 17 one-hour windows. They're not going to do it during extra magic hour in the morning, right? Because they've got magic mornings from 7 to 8.
Magic 8 Ball says check back later. I mean, the problem is that you've got concierges that work at all of your higher-end resorts are like, I have to be able to tell my guests that they're going to be getting some sort of a special perk here. So what are we doing?
So here's why I asked the question. On June 2nd, so 2 days after Galaxy's Edge starts previews, the park is only open for 10 hours, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That seems unlikely, right? I mean, it's open till midnight every other day that week, as far as I can tell. But closing at 6 means the last group that can go in goes in at 4? No, 2. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Yeah, because they're not going to let people in at 5 only for an hour, which means that they've got an 8 a.m. slot, a 9, a 10, a 12, an 11, a 12, a 1, a 2. I can't count today. So what, seven groups? That's not very many people to get into the park, unless they're assuming that they're going to need the time from 6 p.m. on to sort of do maintenance on the land.
Just like last week with the reservations being out of sync and that sort of thing. There are lots of people who are supposed to be talking to one another and comparing schedules that haven't quite done that yet. So.
Yeah. All right. So that'll get settled. All right. Fair enough.
We hope.
All right, Jim. One more quick thing, and then we'll take a quick break and come back for our main part of the show. Jim, I was looking over some of the new restaurant names that Disney's been toying around with, and I have to ask, when did restaurant names become so literal? Like, when did the restaurant names start spelling out everything on the menu? Like, the new place over at Coronado Springs is Toledo, tapas, steaks, and seafood. I wonder what they're serving there, right? Or the new restaurant in France that's called the Crêperie. It serves crepes. In Disneyland, right, there's a place called Black Craft Burgers and Shakes. What's happening here, Jim?
I'm sorry, Len. We live in a search engine driven world right now. And it's somebody sitting there with their iPhone and going, I want dinner and I would like a burger. I'm at Disney World, or I want
Disneyland Space Burgers, Disney Space Steaks. Yeah.
It's not that Disney hasn't shortened or collapsed names in the past. I mean, for example, if you look at the pre-opening stuff for the Grand Floridian, Narcoossee's.
This was my example, right? Are we ever going to see a name like Narcoossee's again? It's not like they're serving Native Americans. Narcoossee's dash. We don't serve ground up Native Americans.
Yeah, but again, back in the day, Narcoossee's was actually Narcoossee Nick's, or at least if you looked at the stuff for '87 prior to the opening of the Flow. And they collapsed that name in prior to the Flow opening in June of 1988.
And it ended up just as Narcoossee's.
Yep.
How about that? I don't know, Jim. I think this trend is unusual. They kind of got away from it a little bit at the Riviera with the Topolino's Terrace, the flavors of the Riviera.
I agree.
That at least doesn't say, comma, we serve Italian and French food. But if there was a subtitle to that restaurant, I'd bet money that's what it was.
You're probably not wrong.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. Coming up after our break, Jim talks us through the next to last episode of our Chronological Disneyland series with the end of Michael Eisner's time as CEO and the beginning of the run of Bob Iger. We'll be right back.
Getting ready to step into your career era? Set yourself apart with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Hone your skills with apps like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and more, powered with the latest in creative AI. Students save over 55% so you can build a portfolio you're proud of. Launch your future with Adobe Creative Cloud Pro for students. Visit adobe.com/students to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
All right, Jim, our next to last episode of the Chronological Disneyland series, talking about the end of Michael Eisner's time as CEO, and the beginning of the run of Bob Iger. Where do you want to begin?
I thought we'd start with what people were most recently complaining about, and that was the changing out of the auction scene in Pirates of the Caribbean. I think that was June of last year they did that, and the take a wench for a bride scene. And, you know, there was all this grumbling about political correctness and that sort of thing, but it's like, you understand? This happened before, back in January of 1997. They took, it's actually the scene after the auction where you had the pirates chasing the women that they just bought.
I do remember this because this was right around the time that I started with my not only graduate school, but reading the unofficial guide in detail as part of my graduate school work. So I do remember, you know, when this happened.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Because here's Tom Bricado from the Disneyland Resort in January of that year going, we listened to our guests, and our guests have raised concerns about that scene. But now, you know, you swap out lust for gluttony. All they really did was they reversed the positioning of the A figures on the, sort of the merry-go-round mechanism. So now instead of the women or the men chasing the women, it's the women chasing the men, and the men are holding platters of food that they've stolen. Okay. The other thing, though, as an old Epcot fan, they had shut down World of Motion at Epcot the year previous, and they actually folded in. If you were paying attention and were a fan of that attraction, you could find a lot of those figures in the updated new PC version of Pirates of the Caribbean. And this was during a period where the company was kind of not only getting concerned about politically correct issues, but also getting kind of concerned that Disneyland was kind of getting out of sync with what the company was up to. Right? For example, March of 1999, we saw the Swiss Family Treehouse shut down, and then 3 months later...
At Disneyland, right?
Yep. It opens up as the Tarzan Treehouse. And they had James MacArthur, who had played Fritz in the Disney live-action Swiss Family Robinson movie back in December of 1960, and they asked him how he felt about, you know, this new attraction coming in, and it's like, he said, you know, it's kind of weird to outlive your memorial.
Yeah. The thing is, like today, is Tarzan viewed any differently, you know, 20 years on than Swiss Family Treehouse?
That's a very interesting question, because Tarzan, going forward, was then supported by an animated series that ran for 2 years.
I do not remember that, which tells you probably how many other people saw it.
Yep. There was also, I want to say, a home premiere, Tarzan 2, but the company felt, at least for a while, it was a better bet. We're either supporting a movie from 1960 or we're supporting a movie from 1999.
Yeah.
It's still today a problematic attraction because, obviously, if we're talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act, you have a whole bunch of people who can't take advantage of this attraction. And whether they mean to or not, this sets Disney up in a situation where people get resentful. And so as we move into, say, things like Shanghai, you know, you have that whole Adventure Island section where it's all climbing ropes and moving through obstacles and that sort of thing. But they did make a point of putting in enough stuff that folks who are differently abled can still enjoy the same attraction.
Okay.
The other big news during this period is the introduction of FastPass. I mean, I don't need to tell you how that fundamentally changed the theme park experience. And the problem was when you bring FastPass into a park at that point that's just shy of its 45th birthday, you're dealing with walkways that were laid out in the 50s. Where do we put all of these extra people? And in fact, the first set of of fast passes that were set up at Disneyland. You had Small World Holiday, and then immediately followed with Space Mountain, Splash Mountain, and Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin. And they picked attractions that are deep in the park to drive people as far as possible into the park. But at the same time, that shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how FastPass works, because
the idea is not to go stand in front of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you have the pass. It's like, well, I don't have to be in this queue. I'm out in the streets. I'm in the stores, and it's just suddenly like, why does the park feel so much more crowded? It's like, you cut them loose, moron.
Yeah, the 30% of the people who are in line or on rides are now it's down to 20%, right?
Yeah, so there were a couple of years of operational things that really bit them in the butt there, while both the folks at Disney World and Disneyland learned about FastPass. And to add to the fun, February 2001, we got Disney California Adventure opened, and that's a whole different can of worms. But we're going to stick at Disneyland right now. And you're getting in much the same way as shutting down Swiss Family Treehouse and turning it into Tarzan's Treehouse. September 9th, 2001, Country Bear Jamboree closes at Disneyland. And we were talking about how different divisions of the company don't necessarily talk to one another, because here's Parks and Resorts shutting down Country Bear Jamboree at the exact same time that Walt Disney Pictures is making the Country Bears movie.
That's the thing I can't figure out. Like, what? That would never happen today.
One would hope, or if we could borrow the DeLorean and go back in time, it's like, you really don't want to make this movie. It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you do want to close the attraction and also not make the movie. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah. The reason they shut that down is because they wanted to bring the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh ride that had been so successful at Disney World's Magic Kingdom to Anaheim. At the press event, that opening day, nobody was asking about Winnie the Pooh. That was because the day previous, Disneyland had opened and Space Mountain closed. I mean, Space Mountain closed for 2 years, Len, on that day.
For 2 years? This was unannounced, right?
Yes. So the press is there. Hey, what's the deal with Space Mountain? We don't want to talk about it.
Oh, just a thing. Just we'll have it back up in a couple of days. As soon as you guys leave. No need to write about this.
According to folks I've spoken with who worked at the attraction that day, they came in and did their normal safety inspection. They were just firing up the systems. They were eyeballing the track, and somebody noticed that there was a length of track that, whether it was bolts had broken or just overnight, without anybody riding it, it said shifted out of place. And it was like, what the hell? And so they then walked through and checked bolts on a number of key sections of the track, and it's like, oh my God, we cannot let the guests on this. And so they shut it down. They tore out all of the track. By the time this thing reopened for July of 2005, it was effectively a new attraction. But what had happened back in 1997, they created a brand new thing they called the Streetacular, the light magic show, that was supposed to replace Main Street Electrical Parade. In fact, they spent $40 million on these floats that were stages that could roll down the street. And
I don't remember any of this.
There's a reason it lasted one summer.
Oh, okay. All right. I was like, what was I doing in the middle of this?
But they built these things to last 10 years. They were so sure they had a hit, but it was a $40 million boondoggle. And so going into the fall of 1997, the then president of Disneyland Park hires T. Irby. He's a former major general for the U.S. Army. He had served 33 years, and they effectively brought him in to be Disneyland's landlord. He was the head of facilities for the parks, and he brought kind of a U.S. Army attitude in, which was basically that you run something until it breaks, and then you fix it. So during this period, it was not uncommon to get on a ride like, say, Pirates of the Caribbean and notice that, wow, there's a number of A-figures that aren't moving, but you can still, enjoy the ride. In fact, for example, with Pirates of the Caribbean, they wouldn't shut it down for maintenance until the auctioneer malfunctioned, because it was like, that's a key figure. If the auctioneer isn't working, we have to shut this down, but otherwise we can get away with this going on. And And going forward, there were a couple of troubling warning signs. I mean, for example, there was the Christmas Eve 1998 where the Columbia was coming into dock and a cast member jumped out and took a mooring rope and tied it to a cleat, and the cleat came loose.
Oh, geez, really?
With the tension on the rope, it flew into the crowd, and there was a gentleman, Luan Fee Dawson, who both he and his wife were hit in the head with this cleat.
Those things are huge, and they're metal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He suffered a traumatic brain injury, and 2 days later died. And in the end, Disney did an investigation, and they believed that it was cast member error at that point. They were bringing the Columbia in too quickly.
Oh, too much tension on the rope, which caused... Okay, all right, fair enough.
But at the same time, there were people at Disney who very quietly, it's like, well, there was also the dock should have had preventative maintenance. The cleat came loose because there was dry rot. This is unfortunate. We're sad for the family, and a settlement was made and that sort of thing. But so you had this incident happen December of 1998. You had the Space Mountain track issue in April of 2003. And the thing that really got things going badly here was September of 2003. Marcel Torres, 22, of Gardena, California, is riding Big Thunder Mountain. Trains run around the track that morning 12 times. On the 13th time it comes into the station, the cast members hear a noise. And they're like, okay, when this train comes in again, let's pull it out of the rotation. That noise concerns me. And the problem is they didn't get the chance to pull it out of the rotation, because as the train was going around the track this next time, the locomotive that's in the front of a Big Thunder car came up off the track and folded back on the first car. And poor Marcel was crushed. Department of Occupational Safety and Health, California, comes in, does a full investigation, and they basically determined that there had been some miscommunication. In fact, the folks who did maintenance, there was some confusion over to whether they should have used a green tag or a yellow tag, or they were doing the work necessary on these cars. And by March of 2004, they're allowed to start running Big Thunder again, but by then, T. Irby has been moved on to another job assignment within the park, and preventative maintenance becomes the byword at Disneyland.
Understandably so, right?
Yeah, but not just for safety reasons, Len, because at this point we are just 14 months out from Disneyland's 50th anniversary.
Okay.
The whole world is going to be coming here. And Matt we met, who had been up until that point working over at the Disney Cruise Line, they bring him in to Disneyland 5.5 weeks after the Big Thunder incident. And Matt's job is to get Disneyland ready for its 50th anniversary. And it's an impossible task that he manages to pull off. I mean, if you came through the door on May 5th, 2005, the place looked like it did in July of 1955. Every inch of it was painted. It was scrubbed, immaculately. Matt comes through the door in 2003 and realizes we probably need a new attraction for the 50th. And what are we going to do? And there was some discussion initially. I don't know if you remember when you go to Disneyland in 2004, 2005, just off of the hub, there was a Little Mermaid meet and greet.
I remember this.
Yeah, well, there was some discussion because there was this thing called Triton's Garden that you'd effectively walk through as you'd make your way to the aerial meet and greet. And the thing is, what if we take the building that the Rocket Rods queue used to be in, which back in the day was the Circle Vision 360 building. What if we put a Little Mermaid right in there and we create, and again, Matt was looking for a shortcut. It's like, okay, so we already have the queue outside. People, queue through Triton's Garden, and we'll have them enter the show building at the back, the side that faces the Matterhorn, and we'll have them exit down by where the Sub Lagoon was. But the thing of it is like, now, wait a minute, if we're going to do a Little Mermaid ride, we got to design a ride system, we got to build the sets, and we only have till May of 2005. So Matt, practical guy, was like, all right, well, hang on. Since 1998, they've had that Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger spin in Florida. Let's do that instead. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. And sure enough, they were able, because he made that choice, they were actually able to have that thing open before the 50th anniversary got started on May 5th. They got it open in March.
Mm-hmm.
But 2005, significant year for the company, not just because of the 50th anniversary of Disneyland. It's also the year that Michael Eisner agreed to step down as CEO of the company. But Michael insisted that he be allowed to stay on long enough so he could preside over the opening of Hong Kong Disneyland, which,
Sure.
if you go from Main Street to the castle, that really is a clone of Anaheim. It just, Michael really played it safe toward the end of his career with the company. But there's this famous story of Bob Iger being there at the opening of Hong Kong Disneyland, and he's watching the opening day parade, and particularly the people who were watching the parade. And as the parade floats went by with Mickey, Minnie, Winnie the Pooh, that sort of thing, there wasn't all that much of a reaction. Whereas when the parade floats went by with Buzz Lightyear and Woody, from Toy Story, got a huge reaction. And this was actually the moment that Iger realized, if we're going to continue to make these parks, we need characters that people know now. This is the moment that Disney and Pixar are on the outs. In fact, Steve Jobs is already talking with other studios about, do you want to distribute these films after our deal with Disney is done? So
right, yeah, this is the thing where they didn't want to deal with Eisner.
Yep. I don't know if you saw, just announced earlier this week, Len, Bob Iger's got a book coming out later this year.
No, really?
Yeah, it's called The Ride of a Lifetime: Lessons Learned from 15 Years as the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. It's coming out on September 23rd. So I'm going to assume this story is included as part of the book because, again, January 5th to 25th, 2006, Disney buys Pixar for $7.4 billion. John Lasseter's made creative consultant in Imagineering. And then from there, we get into IP land.
Yeah.
Iger's not on the job 9 months before we see the Jack Sparrow and Barbossa animatronic figures go into Pirates of the Caribbean. Or
I was okay with that. Mm-hmm. Sort of fit the theme, and it was a really good movie. All right, go ahead.
Well, how did you feel about the following year when they did the Pirates Lair thing out on Tom Sawyer Island? Did that work for you?
A little bit of a stretch.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, things continue to stretch, Len. Not 6 weeks after the Pirates Lair opens up, we get the June 11th opening in 2007 of the Finding Nemo submarine voyage. And remember, we just told that story on the last installment of this about the Atlantean encounter and how that at least sort of fit the sci-fi theme, whereas this is the company spent $70 million to bring the subs back with this cartoony theme that really doesn't fit Tomorrowland. But again, it's a hugely popular IP that, frankly, 6 months prior to this in Walt Disney World, on the very same day, we had The Seas with Nemo and Friends open at Epcot, while across the way, Finding Nemo the Musical opens at Animal Kingdom. And then just 2 days before the Finding Nemo submarine voyage opens in Anaheim, we have Crush's Coaster open at Walt Disney Studios in Paris. So this was...
I was there a few months after it opened. Mm-hmm. You talk about, it's one of the longest lines I've ever waited in my entire life. Mm-hmm. But also, the French are a more petite people than me.
Okay.
I had trouble fitting into the ride, into the seats. I am not a large person. Mm-hmm. When I heard that they were bringing over the Remy ride from Disneyland Paris, I was like, I hope the ride vehicles are bigger.
Eesh.
Have you been on Space Mountain in Disneyland Paris?
I have not.
I went on with Fred, our statistician, one time, and again, neither of us are particularly large people. We're in reasonably good shape. Mm-hmm. Both of us had trouble getting in the individual seats in this. It was like we were the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in a Barbie car.
Oh,
it was like Fred. Like we're not big. What's going on here? It's like, smaller people over there. I don't know. I have a headache now just talking about it. Go ahead.
I'm now very concerned about Remy at Epcot. But again, the decisions they made there about bringing the Pixar characters in. I mean, if we shift attention back over the California Adventure quickly here, that park opens, as we mentioned, February 2001, and then just struggles to get people to come through the door. Because remember, this was supposed to be the companion park. This was supposed to be the blow-off when Disneyland got too busy, and It was also supposed to pull the Walt Disney World to compel people to buy vacation packages so they'd stay in Disney's on-site hotels for 2, 3, 4, 5 days at a time. And so they try to fix the California Adventure problem by throwing characters at it. So we talked about at the top of the show about Flicks Fun Fair. That opened in October 2002. I mean, the park had barely been open a year at that point, or a year plus, and it's like, let's get a new land in here with characters. And then we get the Aladdin musical opens in 2003, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, May 2004, Turtle Talk with Crush. Give you some idea how quickly that was cloned. The Epcot version only opened in November of 2004.
Yeah.
So it's like,
hey, we're going to make two of everything.
Yeah. And then, of course, we get Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully the Rescue opens January 2006. But it just
was there something at DCA before that?
You were talking about Superstar Limo, aren't we? And,
okay.
That's a whole show unto itself. Len, that is definitely, it puts the lotion in the bucket country. You don't, there's so much trauma associated with, Superstar Limo. That's a whole show unto itself.
All right, we'll do that then.
So October 2007. We get Disneyland announcing that they are about to begin a $1.1 billion 5-year-long redo of California Adventure, where virtually everything that's going to go into this park is now driven by a well-known IP or it's character-based. And that pretty much is where we should probably leave off for the final installment of the Chronological Disneyland, where we go from the DCA redo to Galaxy's Edge, and to how the lessons that were learned on Cars Land are being used today as they rush to finish Black Spire Outpost.
Cool. All right, so we're going to wrap it all up in the next show.
There we go.
It's a bittersweet thing to look forward to. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the Disney Dish show today. And for more of us, head on over to disneydish.bandcamp.com, where you'll find exclusive shows never before heard on iTunes. We are produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who says you don't have to be a star, baby, to be in his show. Don't forget to go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on the next show.